Okay, welcome back for some extra. Shall we start with Christian Zionism?
Well, yeah, let's get to that in a moment. That was a very interesting clip. I don't know if we have that clip. Did you mean to show the first 30 seconds of it again is worth it? But but before that, Mike, if Seymour Hersh is right, and it's a fait accompli, and the United States is going to launch a severe air campaign against Iran over the weekend, we could be waking up to a different reality on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. The worst thing about this, and this is the most cynical part of it, is that according to his sources, Trump wanted to avoid too much tumultuous shocks in the market by waiting until after the weekend. So, I mean, the cynicism of this is the world we live in.
So what you're saying is if he had waited till after the weekend, that would have created the shocks to the markets? Whereas if he does it over the weekend, it gives them a bit of time to acclimatize before
exactly.
No panic on Monday morning.
Yeah, I take that as meaning late Friday night or Saturday. So, but it's so cynical. Let's launch World War III over the weekend because we don't want to disturb the markets and, hit people too hard on their 401ks and IRAs.
Well, look, Patrick, my experience is because, I did work for a hedge fund for a while, and my experience is that whenever there's the prospect of war coming along, these guys get really excited.
Mm-hmm.
And, the number of times somebody said to me, I wish they'd just get the damn war started.
Yeah.
Because they want to see the moves in the markets.
They want to buy in the dip.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. It's pretty sick, but this is the United States. It's forget about the military. It's all about the dollar. That's where it's at. That's where the real power is. It's what we've been saying for a very long time. The United States is not necessarily top dog in the military areas compared to a lot of other countries. Other countries got the tech. They got huge advances, and as Iran is demonstrating in avionics and rocket technology, and plus all the other cyber capabilities, the drones, the AI, et cetera. The U.S. doesn't have a monopoly on any of this stuff. So, but what does the U.S. have a monopoly on? World financial preponderance through the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. They can move the markets whichever way they want.
This whole thing's destroying that, though, isn't it?
It's damaging it, certainly. It's also damaging the trust and credibility of the United States government. And if the U.S. economy goes into a heavy tailspin, look at the bond markets. It's not good.
No.
Nobody wants to touch the 10 years, let alone the 30 years. I mean, it's just gone. Japan's dumping. This is the number one subsidizer of United States debt. Japan. They're out. So I think it's you're looking at, could this be an engineered war to basically cover over the collapse of the U.S. dollar-dominated financial system, fiat system, and replace it with, we've got some magic tools here. How about central bank digital currency? How about that?
I don't think it's engineered in that sense. I think that these people like to take advantage of every opportunity that comes along. I think this absolutely, they are busy building this parallel infrastructure at the moment, which will, they hope, be sitting there waiting in the wings whenever the dollar finally collapses, and the markets, without doubt, have been, somehow balancing on this knife edge since 2008. And
but if they're getting richer, that means somebody must be getting poorer, right? So if we don't have the tools or the access or the capital to capitalize off these giant disparities in the market that result from these extreme foreign policy and war measures, then we're going to have a wider wealth gap, aren't we?
I mean, there is no question that everybody, 99.999% of the people are getting poorer, while there are definitely capital flows to the fraction of 1% that are at the top of that pyramid. But of course, we've also got to appreciate that a lot of that is being driven by money expansion and so on, and so it's fake wealth actually. But Mark, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking that this has an interesting parallel with the financial thread that I was unearthing from the Bilderberg meeting, because what they're saying is that the Savings and Investment Union, the launch of it, where we're concerned they might pilfer Europeans' high savings, that launch of the Savings and Investment Union, just a day before that launch, the European Commission announced a rearmament effort projected to cost up to 800 billion euro by the end of the decade, a European rearmament effort. So you've got the short-term threat of war with Israel and Iran, something more impulsive, something more imminent. But then you've got these broader brushstrokes of rearming Europe, and they're worried about fragmented capital markets in the EU compared to the less fragmented capital markets of the US. And then they're citing trillions of dollars of European savings to be the backstop or the leverage or the mortgage finance, however they're going to do it, to rebuild Europe's poor investment performance right now. What they claim is underinvestment in Europe, and a big part of that is rearmament. So short-term and long-term, short brushstrokes, broad brushstrokes, the defense contractors and military arming is just a major driving force behind world powers right now. It's you just see it all over the place, obviously, in the big picture and in the more snapshot type things going on.
So, but I mean, you say short term. I'm going to suggest it's not actually. We are looking at sort of perpetual war, because we've got Ukraine
more
already
imminent.
Down the road. We've got Gaza well down the road. We've got Iran just about to kick off in a very big way. What's next, Patrick? Right. Pakistan, China, India? What happens?
Absolutely. We didn't even get into that. Israel's already telegraphing that the Pakistan regime needs to go and that Pakistan shouldn't be able to have nuclear weapons. So you can see, look at the map. You go from Iran, once you have a regime change in Iran, then that's a launching pad for a U.S. puppet regime. U.S. bases there. The CIA will then have a giant station there. The British will be in there, of course, doing their perfidious activities alongside their American best buddies, and of course Mossad. So this is the troika. Actually, it's Israel, the UK, and the United States active in Ukraine, active in Gaza, and active in Iran, and will be active to topple the government in Pakistan and then denuclearize it, and that'll break up China's massive partnership with Pakistan and all of their Belt and Road projects that they've got going together and straight through Central Asia. Not to mention Iran in terms of being such a key node in the entire Belt and Road network, okay, plus the north-south corridors. I mean, they feel in the West they have to break this up. They have to sabotage, they have to disrupt and destroy, not to build anything. Nope. Just to prevent other people from being prosperous. That's where the Anglo-Americans are. That's where the Europeans are. The Europeans are as dumb as a box of rocks because they're just getting poorer as a result of all this. Britain doesn't care. The U.S. doesn't care because they consider themselves, out of Europe, as it were, and they have their own sort of economic blocks and trading networks and fiat monetary systems that can keep their preeminence. But Europe is really the idiotic stepchild of this New World Order, and they're just going to become a tourist theme park by the end of it.
Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack from all this. Going back to the USS Nimitz, the aging aircraft carrier, all eyes are on that now as this about to be decommissioned nuclear-powered aircraft carrier could be conceivably junked. They even said that the Twin Towers were full of asbestos and they needed a way to demolish them much more efficiently. Now that's some call that a bit of a stretch, but nevertheless,
and pollute
it's attempting.
Mark, and pollute the most beautiful part of the Mediterranean Sea. Why not just drop a radioactive hunk of garbage right in the middle of that? That'll be good for the environment, won't it?
Yeah, and a few torpedoes and a few bombs and missiles is a lot cheaper than the estimated $1 billion to decommission this thing. Of course, to be sure, an aircraft carrier full of warplanes, which probably would have escorts, is going to be less vulnerable than a spy ship like the USS Liberty, which Phil Turney noted, and he was puzzled at the time that they were denied a destroyer escort when they went into the Eastern Mediterranean. The USS Liberty was denied a destroyer escort. And before the Israeli attack, he was very puzzled about that because there was a war going on right there. So, would the Nimitz go into the Middle East maybe with fewer escorts than normal? That might be something to look for. Because usually an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. I think the Yemen situation absolutely demonstrated that the United States is not capable of defending a carrier group
if it's under attack.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I've never quite understood how the what do they call Houthis could be quite that proficient. I've always wondered if there's more to unearth or more to discern about that whole thing. But nevertheless, the arrogance of the U.S. empire is probably its worst enemy. Like the arrogance of Rome in its latter days. The idea of invincibility when it just doesn't exist.
When has a carrier group ever been under attack since Second World War?
It hasn't.
Well, there's one, Falklands, right? You had a British carrier.
Yeah.
It was protected by destroyers and frigates, right?
I'm going to say I don't know enough about what kind of target that actually became.
It became a target with very old and rudimentary exocet missiles. And the technology that the Houthis have is in advance of that. But it just goes to show you can't defend a navy in today's day and age. The weapons just completely neutralize naval power if they're close to shore, close enough to shore that somebody has within firing range. They're only good against adversaries who can't shoot back.
We need Brian.
Yeah.
In this conversation.
But the general point is today's missile and rocket technology neutralizes naval power to a large degree. Okay. It's just the way it is. And the United States is going to run into that problem should they decide to attack Iran. And it's going to be a long war. And no doubt the United States is going to be receiving, they're already evacuating their Middle Eastern bases. Have you seen those reports? Yeah.
No, I hadn't seen
the United States is evacuating some of their main bases. They're already in the process of evacuation. So that was another clue. We didn't have time to mention that, unfortunately, during the news segment, but that was another indication, which I should have mentioned, that leads one to say that Seymour Hersh's prediction of a fait accompli this weekend is probably accurate. I hope it's not. We're all praying that it's not. I know there's some pundits that are dying for this war to happen, including in our alternative media, because it's going to be great for their social media followings and their Twitter space engagement and their YouTube subs. They're just gagging for it. Okay, I'm not.
Hopefully no one is, because honestly, it's.
I wish there were no wars and we could all get to gardening and fishing and other things, but unfortunately, we have to do this because these people want to kill us all. Just as simple as that.
Okay, well, let's talk about the where the support is coming from for this, because in the United States, clearly there is this very close relationship between support for this conflict and, as you described it, extreme Christianity. But extreme Christianity doesn't seem to be a marginalized thing in the US. It seems to be quite a significant proportion of the total number of Christians.
Well, it's marginalized, Mike, in the sense that it's not given mainstream coverage. It's bifurcated in America. They have their own groups, their conferences. They have their tele-evangelical preachers. Mark knows what I'm talking about. They have huge audiences within their little sort of echo chambers. But rarely will you see a major mainstream media person put someone like a senator on the spot to kind of tease out his extreme, fanatical, loopy, end times, crazy belief systems. This guy that's making foreign policy for the U.S. government. Tucker did that. And I can't tell you what a great revelation this was. It might even be a game changer. I'll just put it that way, because this is something that's been kept hidden. The Israeli lobby, the Zionists like to keep this hidden just enough so Average Americans, reasonable, normal people don't see this side of America, but yet it lurks right there at the heart of the beast in Washington, D.C. But unless you go to the events, unless you attend the crazy confabs of these fanatical nutcases, you will not know. I went to one of these undercover. I went to an MEK rally in the United States, and Rudy Giuliani was the keynote speaker. John McCain coming in on the Skype call. It was the most insane cult sort of confab you could imagine. It was absolutely crazy, and the United States senators, congressmen, all queuing up to take money from this terrorist organization that promises to overthrow the Iranian government and be marching to Tehran. John Bolton Howard Dean was on their patrons list as well, Democrats and Republicans. Unbelievable. And full of Zionists. And then what they do is they take the Iranian diaspora, all these millionaire Iranians that fled when the Shah lost power in 79 with the Islamic Revolution. They come to America. These all people have done very well in business. And then they basically tease money out of them. And they get them to donate into the campaign coffers of all these U.S. politicians that then promise these Iranian expats that we're going to overthrow the Ayatollah. This is part of the whole political system, and it's a giant money laundering machine. And most people don't even know it exists unless you go to the events because they don't broadcast. It's the same with Christian Zionism. Absolutely you-know-what crazy. And these people are making foreign policy. They're deciding if there's going to be a third world war. These nutcases like Ted Cruz and people like him. It's absolutely frightening.
Mark.
Yeah, it's also interesting. A close parallel of this is that the MAGA base, the grassroots MAGA base, not only including Tucker Carlson, but Marjorie Taylor Greene and Steve Bannon are crying foul here lately, saying, look, Donald Trump, Israel can be Israel first, but we're America first. That's what MAGA is supposed to stand for. And that doesn't mean we should be all in on fighting Israel's wars. So there's dissent in the ranks, as I understand it. Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, and others, they're beginning to balk at this absolutely ridiculous, unconditional, no matter what support for Israel's wars. And so that's some good news. It's something that
but hold on a second, Mark, because it's not Israel's wars, is it? Because this has been a policy objective of the United States for how long? 30 years?
60.
60 years?
60 years.
So go ahead.
This is their language, though. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, Steve Bannon. They're calling it Israel's wars. They're saying the U.S. needs to be America first. Maybe Israel will be Israel first. I'm more or less paraphrasing them. But I do see what you mean, Mike. The U.S. has that long-term control interest in the overall narrative and the overall geopolitical machinations. I do know what you mean by that. It's also noteworthy on the Christian Zionism front that they don't get a lot of direct media coverage. Like the 700 Club by Pat Robertson will pay ABC money to use the ABC network to broadcast the 700 Club, which is a combination of news and preaching and whatnot. But other than that, you have to go to those specific stations, like Patrick said, their own echo chambers to see what the Zionist line is. So they'll buy time on regular stations, but other than that, they're on their own stations. And the big thing they miss theologically, and I don't know if Tucker Carlson or Candace Owen got into this because we only saw part of what they had to say, but from the New Testament perspective, Jewish power is shown in the Pharisees, in the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin was diametrically opposed to the message of Christ, which we might have touched on Extra a week or two ago. But so what the Christian Zionists are basically saying is that they want to support the basic philosophy of the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, that crucified Christ, they crucified the Lord and Savior that the Zionists claim to, honor as the number one thing, that, the Trinity and Christ's redemption, his resurrection, his ascension, and the promise of eternal life. The Zionists claim ultimately that's their main message. They're all in for Christ, but they're actually supporting the very people that were against Christ's movement in the days of Christ, the philosophy of the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin is virtually identical to at least the biblical claims that the Israeli state makes, or the Zionists make those claims, and then they try and say that Israel is in tune with those with the Bible and things like that. But the Israeli state, I think, is more of a secular state, and they kind of just go along with the Zionist narrative, but because it provides a theological cover for what they do.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of there's a psyop going on here. It's a major psyop, and I'm just elaborating on it.
It's very deceptive. It's very deceptive. And when you see Netanyahu, kind of giving flattering the Christians when he's making his ridiculous presentations, talking about, and the Bible says, and all this stuff. It's all deception. He's not genuine. He's not sincere. He's literally trying to use American voters in order to get what he wants. But back to that question about Israel's wars and Americans' wars, because this all comes down to the heart of it. We discussed this last week during this extra segment, and it's the relationship between the United States, and it is disingenuous, this argument that Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Tucker Carlson are making. I understand that's the language politically that will work in America to kind of try to pull MAGA away from, quote, fighting Israel's wars. But these are the same people that will say we need to confront China. We need to contain China. China wishes us harm. China's our enemy. The whole gambit with Iran is really geopolitically about China. But what you have in it, well, I'll explain it again, as I did last week. It's a quid pro quo. Israel's allowed to basically do what it wants, which is to create a greater Israel. The United States supports that. They allow that. They fund that. They'll look the other way on little things like genocides and, ethnic cleansing. Don't mind, out of sight. Don't worry. And then what the U.S. gets from it is Israel is their junkyard dog in the Middle East. And they attack everybody that America wants to attack and weaken and divide and conquer and so forth. And Britain and America, be sure, that wants to attack, because to topple the Iranian government, to make that a launching pad to disrupt the Belt and Road Initiative, then take Pakistan down, and then contain and damage China in the process. So all these people are saying it's not America's war. It is 100% America's war. They don't understand, or they're conveniently ignoring American deep state policy and continuity for the last 70, 80 years. And that's totally congruent with British geopolitical grand strategy as well. So it is. So if they're really sincere, they'll say China's not our enemy either. In fact, why should anybody be our enemy? But these people always do the same thing. No, but China. No, but we don't want to fight this war. We think the Ayatollah is an evil person. We don't know why, but that's what Fox told us. He's an evil person. But no new wars, no new wars. So they're saying, yeah, you need regime change, but we don't want to do it. Israel should do the regime change, and we're not going to get involved. Yeah, but you're going to supply the bombs, the planes, the satellite reconnaissance, the ISR. You're going to provide the air-to-air refueling. You're going to give them bases to land their planes, because the Iranians have just pulverized most of the Israeli air bases in Israel. We're going to do all that, but we're not involved. We're going to hand them the gun, put the bullets in, pay for everything, put the hitman in a taxi, send them straight to the thing, have our people hold down the person you're going to shoot, but we're not involved because we're not pulling the trigger. I mean, it is such deception. The lies from the U.S., from the British, the Israelis. This is the level of deceit is just something biblical. That's the real revelation in all this, is just the amount of lying and gaslighting that we are being subjected to.
Well, the thing is, the level of lying and gaslighting that we're being subjected to isn't anything that we haven't seen before. We saw it all through the COVIDocracy. The thing that I'm finding most depressing, if you want to put it in those terms, is that the people that recognized the lying and the deception and the gaslighting, when they were on the receiving end of it, aren't prepared to recognize it, because they're not on the receiving end of it anymore.
Yeah,
it's still there, but sorry, let me rephrase that, because they don't recognize that they're on the receiving end of it, because as you rightly say, we are all still on the receiving end of this because we're paying for it.
Yeah.
And this is destroying our economies. It's destroying our children's futures.
Yep.
It's absolutely going to be atrocious what happens over the next 20, 30 years, assuming we survive the next 2 years. Right? And
yeah, legitimately.
So it's about time we all recognized that the lying, the gaslighting, the deception is of a scale that we've seen before, and it is against us. It's not against a bunch of tall heads in the Middle East. They are going to be on the receiving end of the guns and the bullets for now, until some of these start raining down on our heads, perhaps. But more likely is we're going to be on the receiving end of economic Armageddon as a result of this, and we need to recognize it, and we need to deal with it. But as long as we assume that it's somebody else's problem, we're not going to deal with it.
And one of those lies that we hear repeated over and over from Netanyahu, from every U.S. president and from every British leader is that Iran is the preeminent number one state sponsor of terror in the world for the last 40 years. Where is the freaking evidence for this? Because I thought ISIS and Al Qaeda was the big terrorist group. Wow. ISIS, Al Qaeda. I mean, we couldn't even go like 30 seconds in our lives without being confronted by this propaganda for the last 25 years. But somehow Iran is. And who is Iran fighting in Syria? Who are they dying and who are their forces shedding blood to fight? They were fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda, who are being armed by our governments.
They're fighting us, you mean?
Yeah, they're fighting us. So the Iranians were on the playing for the good guys, and we were backing the bad guys, okay? So Iran is not a state sponsor of terror. The reason they say that is because they label anybody in the Middle East, any militia, any armed liberation struggle, any nationalist liberation struggle, they're labeled as terrorist by Israel if they oppose Israel's hegemony or they oppose American hegemony. And then the governments in Europe and the UK dutifully, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir, we agree they're a terrorist, even though they've never conducted any terrorist attacks in Europe. But they oppose Israel, so automatically, ergo, they must be a terrorist. So we can then Moab them, we can destroy them, we can kill their leaders, we can slaughter their people, and it's all good because we labeled them as terrorists. The fraud here is just beyond, I don't want to say beyond the pale because I don't like I just recently learned the connotations of that term, which is not good. But it's just beyond, Mike. It's this is one of the key pillars of the entire fraud, and people who go along with this, they labeled you terrorists during COVID. You remember? Do you remember?
They're still labeling people.
Yeah.
terrorists.
So you want to play that game? Go ahead, and it will come back on you like a boomerang, like it did before. And if you're in America, I don't even want to go into January 6th and all this, but the J6ers are all lining up, wanting to bomb Iran. You know, these people are absolutely brain dead. I honestly.
I thought, Mike, you might want to show, because it kind of fits the context of what we're talking about, a recent program I took part in.
We'll do that in a second. Just before we finish on this, I just want to come back onto just very briefly on the Christian Zionist angle to this.
Sure.
Because, again, if you haven't seen the 2 interviews that I did with Cliff Kirikoff, who wrote a book called Dark Crusade on this. And then Brian has done a couple of interviews on this topic as well. And I'm sorry, Brian, I can't remember the name of the guy that you spoke to. So I think there are 4 interviews on the UK Column website on the issue of Christian Zionism. If you haven't seen them, watch them. If you haven't read Cliff Kirikoff's book, Dark Crusade, read it. Because this ideology, as with most of these dodgy ideologies, originated in the United Kingdom. It is a British project again. And so, everywhere we look, we have the British deep state driving these things forward. But yeah, okay, Mark, we have to finish in a couple of minutes. So tell us about this conference that you were part of.
Yeah, James Roguski invited me recently. There's a slide for it. It was Freedom Train International, and I took part in one of the discussions. There were several, and each discussion had James as the moderator and 4 or 5 other people. You can see me in the upper right corner there. It was on June 7th. I did the latest one that day. And the basic discussion centered around not only informing more people about the pandemic treaty and the international health regulations and the recent World Health Assembly and what might go on next year at that assembly, because we learned from James that there's this provision within the treaty where they can't actually sign it and finalize it for up to about a year, which buys time. So the conference focused on what we might do to spread the word and to instill more discussion and more questions about what happened during the first COVIDocracy and the crackdown and how to prevent it from happening again. And for my part, what I basically said was I was in the process of contacting journalistic trade publications and journalistic organizations like the Society for Professional Journalists and Independent Reporters and Editors, which is known as IRE, and probably calling journalism schools like the Medill School of Journalism, Northwestern, just north of Chicago. And what I wanted to contribute, and I'm going to be doing this pretty soon, is to talk to some journalism professors and different people and find out why there's this universal goose-stepping attitude toward vaccines, as if there's virtually no danger, especially in vaccines that were rushed to market, which are not really traditional vaccines, the mRNA injections. Why is there this almost jackbooted view that these things are altogether a good thing and that anyone raising questions is out of their head or a tinfoil hat wearing person, that kind of thing, and to explore why journalists aren't asking harder questions about the vaccine and pharmaceutical industry. So that was my contribution that I'm working on, and everybody kind of made their statement and their contribution to raise much more awareness about what the WHO is doing, but also to find out ways to broaden the message and find out what's going on with the media, dig a little harder so we don't get another round of, purely pro-vax propaganda with no dissent allowed. So that's kind of what went down for my part in the overall program. In fact, Mr. Roguski invited me today to take part in another discussion. I'm not sure if I can make it, but he's continuing this kind of ongoing conversation. So that's a very positive thing.
It has been noted, Mark, that you're hatless.
Yes, yeah. And it wasn't that I couldn't find it. I decided not to go with the hat. It was an intentional decision. It was not, hey, where the hell's my hat? So.
Oh, just a correction, Mike. Earlier we talked about the Falklands-Malvinas
Yes.
conflict. Britain deployed 2 aircraft carriers during the Falklands. None of them were hit by Exocet missiles, although they were targeted. But the missiles were deflected to hit chaff and other decoys. But they tried to sink. They tried to hit the HMS Invincible and other ships. 2 aircraft carriers weren't hit. But other destroyers were hit.
Yeah, that's right.
So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Wow.
the basic point, though, Patrick, that these things are sitting ducks, is still valid with modern missile technology. And so, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, we gotta leave it there for today. Mark, Patrick, thank you very much for joining. Thanks everybody that's watched. That was an interesting discussion, to say the least, and. Clearly, you're feeling extremely motivated on this topic, and rightly so.
Oh, yeah. I am very motivated because I hate being lectured to by so-called Christians about morality and my Judeo-Christian values that supposedly exist somewhere, but I've never seen them written down anywhere.
I don't believe there's any such thing as Judeo-Christian values, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. We're going to leave it. Thank you both. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you on Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.